Always got to make sure that my mic button is not muted because I mute that in between scenes. Hey, thank you guys for joining Executive Espresso, Caffeinated Conversations with me, Doc Heath, at the intersection of business, relationships, and life. And we have a great guest with us here today. Chad Hufford is here to supercharge your financial future. He is a Dave Ramsey SmartVestor Pro. He is owner of Veritas Wealth Management, and he manages over, $500 million. That's a lot of money, serving several hundred families across the U.S. He regularly teaches on a couple of my favorite things, fitness and faith. That's a very interesting combo, finance, fitness, and faith. And his life philosophy is also one that I love: to whom much is given, much is expected. And thanks, Chad, for being here. Tell us, man, what did I leave out?
Dr. Heath, first of all, it's a pleasure being here. I know that we've rescheduled this a couple of times, or we've tried to get linked up, and I'm so grateful to be here and be here with your audience. And you didn't leave anything out. If you want to dig into this, we can. But the intersection of faith, fitness, and finance to me is so important, because I believe those are necessary pillars for living an abundant life. And if you're missing any one of those three, it's really hard to feel that you have abundance. So that's why all three of those conversations are so important to me.
I didn't really think of talking about the intersection of those until I just kind of mentioned it there. But I think it is interesting that I think one tends to lead to the other, and maybe it's there's not a number one. It's faith and fitness kind of intermingle to create financial success. But give us some of your thoughts about how those three interact in particular: faith, fitness, and finance.
Well, for me, number one is about stewardship. So I believe that I'm a steward of what I've been blessed with. Therefore, that means my body, my health, my finances, my business, my relationships. And if I feel an obligation or a duty or a mission to be a good steward, a good manager for what I've been given, then it automatically makes me want to pay more attention to my health, my physical fitness, to be more careful with my finances, to be more intentional about my saving, my spending. And it helps anchor me to live in a better relationship with my future self.
I agree. I think that they're really interactional because I love what you said. We're stewards, and we're also stewards of our bodies. So how can you be a good steward in any sense of the word if you're not a steward overall? Either you are or you're not. And so I do think that our bodies are an investment.
Hmm.
It is the one single investment that you really have a hard time getting back once you've frittered it away. I mean, I think you can lose a business and build a business. You can lose health in a business and rebuild it, but it's really hard to lose your health and rebuild that. And so I think that's a valuable conversation. Well, one of the questions I had for you is how you have created financial success with setting a healthy mindset and healthy habits.
Well, mindset is critical, Dr. Heath, because there's a lot of steps or tactics out there for building wealth, and I'm sure a lot of them work, but it's a slow process. Just like being healthy, getting fit is a slow process. So while there may be a lot of avenues to accomplishing that, if somebody doesn't execute those habits long enough, they won't get the results. So the right mindset is necessary to be sustainable. And so often we get caught up in optimal. We want the perfect diet, the perfect workout, the perfect business strategy, the perfect investment strategy, the perfect budget. None of those things exist. Perfect is a unicorn. And what we need to focus on is sustainability. What can I commit to, not today, not tomorrow, not next week, but for years or decades? And without the right mindset, we lose heart, we lose faith, we give up, we get distracted. So that's why I think mindset and perspective is such a critical piece, because it's not what you can do today that matters. It's what you can commit to doing for the rest of your life.
I find that most folks, and you'll see this a lot on social media, uh, uh, follow me or buy my course or sign up for my newsletter, and I'll teach you how to start making 2,000 a day in the next 30 days or something like that. And there's kind of this instant coffee, I might call it instant coffee mentality about creating wealth. But I'm going to guess that's different based on what you just said from what you teach your customers. So what are a couple of those mindset tweaks that you recommend people engage in?
Okay. So you're absolutely right. This isn't about get rich quick. It's trying to build wealth slowly. And the the patience and the perseverance side of it require us to count wins differently. So we want to focus on inputs and not outcomes. Now, the outcome is the goal. It might be paying off my house. It might be having $1 million in a 401k or whatever that thing is. But the input is the thing that I can control. And we are used to celebrating the outcome. When we get the raise, we get the job, we graduate college, whatever the thing is, that's the objective. And that's great. We want to celebrate that. Don't get me wrong. But we also need to learn to reward inputs. When I make an extra $500 payment on my mortgage, that's a win. When I add to my 401k, even when the market's down and it's scary, it's a win. I'm buying the best companies of the world on sale right now. When I get up early and go work out, even though I don't necessarily see a change in my appearance or maybe the scale doesn't change, but I got up and I put on my gym clothes, I worked out. That's a win. We need to learn to celebrate and reward the inputs, not just the outcome. The other thing is to just be willing to be different. Uh, Conventional tactics, conventional wisdom in a lot of areas don't work. Marriages are ending in divorce. People are in jobs that they hate. People are unhealthy. We are one of those obese, over-medicated, anxiety-fueled cultures, but we have more medical knowledge than ever.
And more money. I
And
mean,
more
we're
money.
one of the rich. Isn't that crazy that we're, I guess, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but the least healthy countries in the world when it comes to probably fitness and finance.
So we have to be willing to do things differently than other people. And if you want a result that's different than what other people are getting, you have to be able to choose an action that other people aren't willing to commit to. So those are the two things I would just kind of throw out there is being willing to be different, being willing to take a different path because you're looking for a different destination, and to focus on your input and not just focus on it, but reward it. Reward the small wins. This is a long pathway. It's a marathon. We can't just focus on the finish line. We've got to celebrate some of the milestones along the way.
And I've not thought about this in years actually because I used to work for a company going through college doing financial planning. Of course, I just did that to get into psychology, but I don't recall. I think the calculation that we used to share with people: if you will make 1.5 times your monthly house payment, instead of making a 100% payment, make a 150% payment. You can pay off your house in half the time or something like that.
Yeah, and the higher the interest rate, the actually more the impact that has. At lower interest rates, when they were 2 or 3%, the extra payment helps. But now the interest rates have gone up. That extra payment makes even more of an impact because you're cutting into that principal balance faster, and that higher interest doesn't have as much of an impact because there's less principal to hold against you. So now more than even 2 years ago, doing those extra payments has a bigger help.
And I remember sharing some of these things with my brother, and I get it. I mean, I was a kid. I wasn't a partier as a kid. I've always kind of been kind of a boring guy. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't chew. I don't party. I don't know. I just never found value in those things. But I think it's kind of a question of, are you going to party now or party later? And I would recommend to the young people listening, listen, party later, party later. But the only way you can party later is to invest now in your body, in the things that have meaning to do. And so that may require giving up. I mean, I know this isn't parting, but the $8 a day espresso drink from Starbucks, but $8 a day multiplied times 365 times 10 years is a lot of money. I talked to a guy the other day, and he reminded me that a pack of cigarettes was $8, and he smoked 2 packs a day. $16 a day times 10 years of days is a lot of money, and you can invest that better in your home than going up and smoke. And so it's really a matter of parting now or parting later. And I guess I just decided to party later. I've got a 60,000 gallon pool out back. I live on about a $750,000 property, and that came from being willing to defer gratification and party later. And we have some pretty good pool parties. What 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 are some ways that people can cope with financial setbacks? I would guess that you get people kind of like maybe Chip and Joanna Gaines on the remodel people, and they come to you and say, "Help me fix this." What are some ways that people can overcome those financial setbacks?
First of all, you're absolutely right. There's usually some sort of a trigger. Maybe it's somebody switching jobs, maybe it's somebody who's uh, they just got severance notice, or they're getting ready to retire. But a lot of times it is a setback. It's maybe a death of a family member, or they realize their job is going to be ending in 6 months, and there's some sort of a trigger that's like, okay, I need to take control of my future. I need to start developing a better relationship with my future self. That's what we're talking about with delayed gratification. Really, it's serving your future self and not stealing from your future
Oh,
self.
I like that. That's awesome.
You can use that, but
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 it
but really, I mean,
oftentimes
you're
is.
right.
There's
I think, I mean, gosh, I've actually never thought about that. That if failing to plan today and do healthy things today with my fitness, faith, and finance is literally being a thief of my future self. That's amazing.
Yeah, and we often treat the future version of us like it's a different person.
Ah,
Like, future Chad, future Dr. Heath, they can figure out the consequences of what I'm doing right now. I buy my big screen today, no payments until July of next year. July will never get here. That's somebody else's problem. Um, Retirement, that's somebody else's problem. I'm going to spend my money now. I'm not going to save it. So yeah, you're either serving or stealing from the future version of you. But a
wow.
lot of times, a lot of times that is a huge part of what we're doing is helping people maybe fix, or to use kind of your analogy, remodel things that need to be changed. But it's proactively saving people from mistakes in the future. I think that's one of the biggest values that we offer is preventative medicine. It's looking
Ah,
at what can we avoid, what can we look for down this path that might trip us up, but also be mindful that there's things that are going to surprise us, and we're there to help support people in that moment too. But everybody has financial mistakes, and that's the thing I want to remind people right now as we're having this conversation is that's okay. Don't pretend like you don't have them. The emperor has no clothes, and we all know that, and it's okay to admit it. But in our society, Doctor, we pretend like we've got it all figured out, and then other people don't get an opportunity to learn from our wins, learn from our successes, and they end up repeating our failures, our mistakes, especially our kids. So I think getting our stuff out there in the open and saying, hey, here's what I've done so far. Is it working? Does this make sense? Is this in line with my future goals? And here's what I'm afraid of. Here's what keeps me up at night. The more open and honest people are with that stuff, the better we can help them.
yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think part of that is budgeting, which is a dirty word for a lot of people.
Yep.
But failing to budget is budgeting to fail. Failing to budget is budgeting to fail. So it really depends on how much failure you want to budget into your life, because the bill always comes due. The bill always comes due. You're talking about interest rates, and I think you're probably a lot younger than I am, but I remember in the 70s that interest rates were something like 18% or more.
When I was 5, 6 years old, in the mid 80s, people were buying houses with credit card type rates,
Ah,
17, 18%. Um, and yeah, so right now people can look at it like, oh my goodness, 8%, that's crazy. But we're comparing it to something that was historically low. So yeah, you're
well,
absolutely right.
and the thing is, folks that are listening, just because interest rates are much lower now, there's no guarantee that they're going to stay that low. I'm not an economist, but gosh, we're living in a world that conflict is on the rise internationally. And I would guess that that international conflict is probably going to raise interest rates. I don't know, but it seems like that'd be a good bet.
And whether it does or it doesn't,
Hmm.
that obviously affects financials,
Yeah.
but psychologically, your brain doesn't know the difference between a 2% and 8% interest
Ah,
rates. All it knows is I feel indebted. I feel enslaved to making this payment, this car payment, this credit card payment, even a house payment. Some versions of debt carry more risk than others, but there is a psychological impact of carrying debt where we feel scarcity, we feel imprisoned, we feel restricted. And it's funny you mentioned budget because a lot of people think, well, like a budget is really restricting. No, it doesn't. A budget just tells your money where to go, so you're not searching for where it went. It's just about being intentional. But people don't want to budget and they'll sign up for any debt out there. I mean, we meet people who've never met a debt they didn't like. Debt is what makes you feel restrictive. Debt is what makes you feel trapped. A budget is actually freeing because it allows you to prioritize what is actually important to you so you can direct your money to where you want it to go
yeah.
rather than wondering where it went.
And as a marriage and family therapist, I can just say that it is a huge load off your relationship. Where if once you make the decision on the budget, then it just makes life easier because the decision is already made. I like to ask people, how often do you shoplift when you go to Walmart? And they say, I would never shoplift. Well, why not? It might save you a buck or two. Well, I just wouldn't do that. Well, but why wouldn't you do it? The reason you wouldn't do it is you have decided in advance of going
Yes.
to Walmart that you're not a thief, you're not a shoplifter. I encourage you to do the same with your finances. Don't wait on the potential debt to show up to decide whether to engage in it. Your agreed upon budget with your spouse dictates what you do. You don't got to wait to decide, am I going to spend money on X, Y, or Z? You can decide that in advance by having a budget. And then, and this is terrible marketing, you don't got to come see a guy like me to help you fix your relationship. So,
Well, and to carry that on, Dr. Heath, so not only we're talking about shoplifting, you know, not only when you get into debt, when you take on payments, not only are you shoplifting from your future self financially, you're absolutely shoplifting from your future self psychologically. It creates cognitive dissonance between you and yourself, but it also creates a lot of conflict in marriage. And you see it, I see it, and a lot of people think they can play with fire and not get burned. It's not a good start. It's not a good way to go about doing it.
yeah, it's really pay me now or pay me later. And I tell people, no offense to my divorce attorney colleagues, but divorce is expensive. And one of the things you can do to inoculate your relationship against relationship dissonance and breakdown is to get on top of the finance and agree on that. Well, run out of time, but what's your own top mental struggle, Chad? What are you struggling with currently that's a top struggle for you? We're all human.
Tenderness,
Tenderness,
being
yeah.
being more gentle and tender.
Yeah.
A
And
little bit of intense guy.
you're pretty intense. Yeah, you and me both. My wife regularly reminds me of that. Chill out. Uh, your current best mindset hack. What's your go-to on resetting your own mind?
Focus on inputs and not outcomes. Divorce yourself from the outcomes, commit to the process, commit to the inputs, the things you have control over.
And your top thing to avoid your own financial mistakes.
Top thing to avoid in my own financial mistakes. I think it's asking that question. Am I serving or stealing from my future self?
And I ask myself, is this decision pointing my life in the direction that I want it to go. And if it's not, it's just there's a wrong way sign, there's a wrong way traffic sign. Well, let's leave our listeners with a positive affirmation, something to kind of inspire them moving forward that they can put into action this weekend. What thoughts do you have on that?
You are the biggest variable to your own success. Your actions, your behaviors, your habits, your mindset, those are the variables that determine the trajectory of your life. So you are in control of those things. You can't control what happens around you. You can control how you act, how you respond. Focus on that. Start making better decisions, better habits. Your life will get better because of it.
Chad, thank you so much for joining. You folks that are watching us in the replay, share it out with folks that need some great financial tips. And you can get in touch with Chad at www.veritasalaska.com, Veritas Alaska, as in the state.com. And once again, thanks for being here. And you guys have a great and successful weekend. Get on top of those finances. Bye-bye now.